Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Andrew and I'm so excited to have with us a unicorn nonetheless. That's right, we have Alexis Gerst with Defense Unicorn, who is their Director of Security with us today on the channel. And Alexis, I'm so glad to have you here and I'm gonna pass it to you for a quick introduction.
Yeah, as you said, my name's Alexis. I've been working in cyber for about 3.5 years now, all in defense technology startups, ever since I left the Air Force. So it's been a blast. It feels like 3.5 years hasn't been a very long time. And then at the same time, it feels like it's been forever because this world just moves so fast.
It does. And I mean, let me tell you, Defense Unicorns is also making amazing waves in their own way. And before we get into that, we'll kind of start with the next question we kind of always go into as we start the channel is cybersecurity. So back in first through third grade, we have our amazing career days where we get to talk to our teachers and they ask us the golden question of what do we want to be when we grow up? We say doctors, lawyers, astronauts, veterinarian basketball players, and so much more. But obviously, cybersecurity kind of found us and we're pretty good at it. So, what's your story of how you got into cyber?
Yeah, so I definitely did not think cyber was going to be a thing back when I was in first grade and the teachers were asking me what I wanted to do. A lot of different things went through my mind. I went from everything from veterinarian to neurosurgeon to at one point I was looking into like crop and weed science. I ended up foregoing all of that. And I joined the Air Force because why not? Really, I didn't want to have to foot the bill for college, and that's why I joined the military. So I served 8 years active duty Air Force. 4 of those were enlisted, and I was actually a nuclear weapons maintainer, which is kind of
Nice.
a fun and unique bit of experience. And then I got my degree online while I was enlisted using the GI Bill. No debt
Perfect.
involved, so that was great. And then I
Yep.
commissioned in 2018 as an officer. And from there, I did acquisition program management, which is a fun way of saying I got to work on the very business side of the Air Force. So I wasn't a contracting officer, but I worked directly with contracting officers to help develop some different weapon systems and buy like hardware parts and pieces for the Air Force. And that was actually really the jumping off point for me kind of pivoting my career and saying, okay, well, this business stuff is great. It's kind of boring. I mean, it's fun to look at the impact of what you're doing when you're buying like big weapon systems and things like that. But I could see from like the hardware and parts and pieces that I was working on, the last program that I actually worked on before I got out of the military was the Joint Direct Attack Munition. And that program is about half hardware, half software. And I could really see from that program and then the other wider trends in the Air Force and things that people were talking about is like technology is the way of our future, right? Software is such a huge thing. Cybersecurity is going to be such a huge part of that, obviously, as we're developing
Totally.
critical mission systems. Um, so when I got out of the military, I had the opportunity to do a SkillBridge internship, and I said, "All right, SkillBridge internship is a super low stakes, easy way to just learn about something that I have no clue about because who's going to hire me for a job when I have no clue about it?" I found a connection through one of those companies. I said, "Hey, I want to learn about this software technology thing, and I'd like to intern with you." And they said, "Yeah, we'll do this." Um, I started interning with Second Front Systems, and that internship was about 4 months long. About 1 year into that intern, or 1 month into the internship, their cybersecurity program manager said, "All right, this has been fun. I'm leaving. I'm going to go back and be a pilot now," because he had actually been a pilot for the
Okay.
Air Force and then worked for Facebook. It's kind of a crazy story, but he said, "Yep, I'm out. See you later." And then the CTO came to me and said, "Do you want to be the program manager for this?" And I said, "Absolutely." So my previous program management experience then kind of like segued me into that in a little bit. And I didn't have to be like
Nice.
the technical expert. I was really just helping the security team manage their meetings and their schedules and their tasks and help with the administrative part and the documentation, run stand-ups, all of that kind of stuff. But it was kind of a cool adjacent role because I got to be right next to the security engineers. And as we did things, I ended up in that role for a full year after my internship and got to learn a lot from the engineers. But like you really pick a lot up along the way if you care enough to learn about it and ask the reasons why and pair with the engineer and say, I actually learned how to do a lot of documentation in Markdown. So instead of doing it in like Google Docs, learned how to do some make doc sites and use Git and all those fun things along the way. So it's just like little things that kind of started to add up over time. And then about a year after that, I had the opportunity to move to Defense Unicorns. They were looking for somebody that could handle all of their like IT and security things from an enterprise perspective. Obviously, as a government contractor, there's this thing called controlled and classified information that we tend to handle, and there's all of these lovely NIST requirements that go along with protecting that information. So they needed
Yes,
somebody to
there is.
like, hey, we need somebody to wrangle all of this and make sure that we're doing all the right things for it. So that got to be my job. And then in overtime, I built out a team, hired some other IT engineers. I'm now hiring a security analyst that we just finished interviews for. So I'm super excited. And as we start talking about like resumes and things like that, it's very top of mind because I was just looking through a bunch of resumes a couple of weeks ago.
Well, first off, thank you for your service. And I love how you also say the same thing I do when I talk about the military. Like, hey, not a plug, but the military is a means of growth. Like I joined the military as well out of high school, out of half boredom, and I hated school. And then to later down the road get my master's in cybersecurity. But I leveraged, like, in a sense, I leveraged my military career to get into cybersecurity by joining our cyber protection teams. So, and the GI Bill is pretty rocking because we see a lot of our friends, I'm sure yourself as well, that aren't in the military that maybe are attending school, went to school. I have a lot of my friends that went into law school that I am not jealous of their debt of all the school they have.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so but yeah, so military isn't a means of way, not for everybody, but it is a great way to learn a lot of great skill sets to get into a specific role you're looking for. But Alexa, is it so? I know you said Lexus or Alexis. I want to make sure I'm
Alexis. Yep.
saying Alexis. Okay, perfect. Want to make sure I'm saying the name right. So, second question I kind of have for you, and we'll pivot into my chicken before the egg one. But since you just mentioned you just finished some resume reviews, obviously you got to see, and at your title you sit at, many resumes probably cross your desk when it comes into that finding the best candidate for that best role. Maybe in a few words or some thought. I know we talked about this previously before we hopped on, but when it comes into like finding the best candidate and when you see so many resumes come across your desk, what is the best means or something that someone that really wants to stand out on a resume, or what are some things you've seen on a resume that you're like, wow, like I wish I saw more of this, that maybe we can tell our listeners that things they should be looking into to like make their resume stand out and pop a little bit more.
Um, so this is actually not something that you can do to your resume, but it is something that you can do to make your resume stand out. So I will say the security analyst position that we hired for, there was well over 500 applicants in the matter of like 2 days.
Yep.
And as we started to look through, so as a hiring manager, I'm very intentional about like, these are the skills that I want this person to have coming in. So I define that on the job description. A lot of companies just kind of write whatever stock job description they have for that role. I actually go through for each role and write down like, this is what I need this person to do. And that kind of helps me guide me, like when I do start looking at resumes, what are the key skills that I'm looking for? So if you're trying to make your resume stand out, first of all, make sure that it is written and tailored to the job description, because
Yep.
if you have done things like work in Google security operations, but you just put SIEM on your or SIM on your resume and you didn't actually spell out the tools that you use, like I may or may not find it in that huge stack of 500 resumes. The other thing that was really apparent as we started looking through, and like we did not have time to look through all 500, so we tried to like pull out the ones that we had the skills and the keywords that we were looking for. The other piece was there were several people that messaged me on LinkedIn. Everybody that sent me a personal message on LinkedIn, there's probably like 15 or 20 actually went and looked at their page. And then I went and looked at their resume and their application. So if you want your resume to for sure get seen or more likely get seen, and you know who the hiring manager is, like maybe reach out to them. Not all of those people I pulled into first round. Like some of them I was like, nah, you're not really a fit. But there was probably 4 or 5 that got pulled into the first rounds because they had reached out
Nice.
and I looked at them and I was like, you know what, you might be a good shot for this role. The other really important thing about that, and I may be getting ahead of myself a little bit, but if you're looking to really get into one of these roles, the most important thing to do is networking. And I was talking with a cybersecurity recruiter earlier this week, actually. and they recruit and pull people in almost entirely by network referrals and people that they know or people that they know and have worked with before, because that credibility piece is the easiest way for them to cut through all of the
BS.
AI slop
AI.
noise, the fraudulent applications. Like there's so many fraudulent applications, and that was one thing like that just really smacked me in the face this time around versus over a year ago when I was hiring the last time. Is the amount of fraudulent applications is just increased many times over. So as a real person, you want to be able to cut through that noise, and the best way to cut through that noise is actually through another real person, or through someone in your network that might know that hiring manager. And if you're applying for a job somewhere and you know somebody there, reach out to that person and see if they'll contact either the recruiter or the hiring manager for you, because that warm connection from another real person is really what's going to help pull your resume in front of the people who need to see it. And that's going to give you the best chance to at least get a first interview and maybe a second one after that.
As much as AI is helping out and taking over some positions, it's so silly that some of the most minute, like, hey, talk to a real person. And I always tell people, like, the third part of trying to find a job is networking. And it's exactly like you said, building your self brand and being known in a good way or making waves in a good way in the community and having the strong connections, going to conferences, talking to people, having those meaningful connections, which I understand, like you can build a network of like 2,000 some people. I'm not telling you to message all 2,000 of those people weekly and try to continuously build a strong conversation. But like if you have aspirations to get into government contracting or be a FANG in a FANG company or go into fintech or healthcare, we're finding those connections in your network and keeping those going can be
Mm-hmm.
beneficial for exactly that exact nail on the head reason you said. Because then as soon as that org does have a position, there can be that back thought like, oh man, Andrew's been messaging us and like been in connections for the last year and we've been seeing his growth. We've been seeing what he's been doing. He'd be an excellent fit that we should maybe just even, hey, Andrew, do you know we're hiring, right? Drop that out. So I think the
Mm-hmm.
networking piece of this is huge. But tying into that actually brings in our next question actually perfectly is the chicken before the egg question that many folks in cyber kind of have. I want to get into cyber, but don't have experience, but I don't have experience to get into cyber. And it's kind of the education, certifications, experience question that a lot of folks get asked. And I guess my question to you is where do you rank the three and why?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this one for a while after you sent it over. And even more important than the three, I want to mention one other, which doesn't necessarily come through in the resume, but absolutely comes through in the interviews and the examples as people talk about them. It's not a real word, but I like to use it a lot. It's figure out ability. Like, do you have that figure out ability as a person to go? And what I mean by this is, can you use your resources to go figure out how to do things? And seek out the help that you need. So whether it's using AI, using Google searches to find other resources, might be like Stack Overflow or Discord channels or other things like that. Can you use those resources to figure out how to do what you want to do, or can you find the people who can help you? That is like a candidate that I hire absolutely has to have that. If I don't get that theme coming through, like they're probably not gonna get the job, because I don't want to be hand holding them the whole time after I onboard them, because it's gonna take
Yeah.
a lot longer to get up to speed. So like, are you the person who can figure things out, or are you the person who just kind of says like, I don't know how to do that, and just let that block you? Right, we want them to be able to go figure things out. So that's kind of like my first piece that I really look for. And guess what, that doesn't take any certification, that doesn't take any experience, and that doesn't take any education training. So that is like totally on the playing field for anybody.
100%.
After that, I'll actually talk about ranking the three that you like to talk about. So first one is a hiring manager experience is the most important, and having some relevant experience. So this is like if you're new in it, trying to like do what I did and find an adjacent role that where you're like, I wasn't really qualified for the cyber part, but I was qualified for the program manager part, and I had the business background. And then as I worked in the other role, then I became qualified for other cyber roles. If you can do internships like that, if you can do projects or volunteer work on the side, obviously that really helps. But in that experience piece, like typically I am looking for specific experience, either with some of the tools that we use. If I say CMMC in my job description, I want you to be familiar with CMMC or NIST 800-171. I expect to see that on your relevant experience. And if you don't have the experience, obviously don't put it on there. But if you do, like, make sure that the words match the language, because hiring
Yeah.
managers are just scrolling through this so fast. Yeah, and like the other thing that I look at with that experience is how much familiarity do they have with similar tasks or tasks of this type, or how long will it take me to get them up to speed? My dog
Puppies.
loves to recognize when I'm talking for the day and then come demand that I pet her. So she's here.
She's cool. She can be part of the video.
Cool. Her name was Ginger. She's just short enough to
Hi,
not quite be in
Ginger.
my camera unless she
I
like
saw
sticks her
I,
head
I
way up.
saw I saw the nose. Is it like a
Yep.
lab mix?
She's a Rhodesian Ridgeback and Black Moth Cur mix, so she's got like the fun
Oh,
little cowlick
cool.
all the way up her back. Yeah,
Everyone always needs a good cyber dog. It's like we had like a sock dog at one of my jobs. It was fantastic.
yeah.
It's
Her
fun.
other talent is sitting under my desk and stinking me out. So that happens quite frequently as well. But yeah. Anyway, so experience is first. Certs are second, only because if a role requires it, then I'm going to be looking for the relevant cert.
Yep.
So like a lot of system admin or security type roles, particularly in the defense contractor or Department of War. I keep saying Department of Defense, Department of War space do require like a Security Plus or a CISSP, that type of certification.
Yeah.
So if those roles require it, gotta have that, and that's kind of almost a filtering mechanism. And then that kind of leads me into before I move off of certs, please do not fall into the trap. There are so many people out there who do what I refer to as cert monkeying. And they
Yes.
don't really have much experience, but they've got way more certs than a person with the relevant experience might have. And they just jump from cert to cert. I'm going to keep studying for the next exam. A couple certs are great if they're relevant to what you're doing. More than that is kind of distracting from what I call like getting business done and actually doing the things. So the more you can actually do the things, the better. Don't fall in the trap of just doing all sorts of certs. Also, those certs require continuing education to maintain.
Yes.
It can become a lot of work over time.
I've given that same insight where it's like, look, you can have an alphabet soup behind your name of certifications. You can have the CompTIA suite. You can have the SANS Masters program. You can have OSCP. You can be CSSP certified. And it's just like, if you're just going to be like a learn it, dump it type of mentality, just like, oh, I just need the cert to get a job. That's not going to make you successful. And exactly like you said, maintaining the certifications once you get to a certain level, like you're looking over like $1,000 a year just to maintain the credibility for them. And I've taken certifications, honestly, that I haven't passed. And it's like, it's not that I didn't learn from the course. There's many courses that I still took that just like, you know what? I'm a horrible test taker. I acknowledge that. I know that. But I took all the skills I learned in those courses and I applied it to my work role, and I thrived. I retaught training I learned. And I understand, like, hey, look, like, it would have been great to have the certification. It's cool to put those things behind your name, but we probably both know folks in this industry and folks we've met that have GEDs that are rock star, like brain superstars on what they get to do on the back end of certain tools or coding or engineers. And it's not that they're having 100 certifications behind their name, or they went to Harvard or Yale or some crazy university. They just know how to apply themselves well. They're good. They can teach themselves the material, and they can be really, you can self-teach this through YouTube Academy and other means to learn all these great skills to level yourself up to be the best candidate and kind of really excel in a role. But I think just like you said, yeah, hunting the next certification every single month, every single year, it's going to become taxing. And I think it also takes away from the job, because if you're focusing so much on the certification, you're not really focusing on the job more nonetheless, right? So it's just like,
yeah, it definitely takes time to study and take those certs. And like, so I've been with Defense Unicorns for 2.5 years. I did not start as the director of security. That was a recent promotion like 6 months ago. I started out as I think they called me the IT security mission manager, and it was just kind of a weird name to describe, like, this is the person who's going to be the point for all of this. And I ended up being like an IT engineer at the same time. But it was kind of like, as I grew in that role, then they were like, oh, you're going to be our leader for this stuff. do you have your CISSP? Because you probably should. And then I was like, oh, no, I don't. You're right. I probably should study for that and take it. And in the process of studying for that and taking that test, I actually learned a lot along the way because I was able to apply it and do it. Like, we actually did a business impact analysis and did all the little calculations involved with annualized loss expectancy. And now I actually use that information to make risk informed decisions on what technology we might need to buy to mitigate different risks that we're trying to quantify there. So that's been super helpful that I like didn't just do the academic portion of like learning how to make a calculation. I actually got to put it into context of a business and
Yeah.
say like, how can we use this to make more informed decisions? And that's been super helpful. So then lastly, education kind of falls to the bottom, which is maybe not a popular opinion. To me, education could be a filtering mechanism. And I know to a lot of big companies, it is a filtering mechanism. And they
Yep.
basically say, like, out of 1,000 applications we got, if you don't have a bachelor's degree in X, Y, or Z, we're throwing you out. Like,
Yep.
I could not be even a product manager at any of the large companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon, because they all require you to have a bachelor's degree in like a technical field like cybersecurity, or most of them are computer science, I think, which
Yeah.
seems crazy to me, but it is what it is.
Well, I think it's you mentioned it before too, and like me working in the government side as well. It's like that 85/70, like, hey, having to hold Security Plus, having to hold CEH, CSSP. It's for some of the contracting, kind of like pulling behind the curtain for those trying to get into the government contracting world. When those roles are looking for those specific certifications, the reasons why they might, like, if they specifically require a CSSP or like a CEH or a Security Plus, it's a requirement for some contracts that they have to have
Mhm.
that for the work role. And then same thing now flipping it to the managerial side for CISSP for folks trying to get into that realm that don't hold their CSSP, which I understand, like, hey, certifications aren't the world. You can still be great at your job and not hold certifications. However, comma, it can be that filtering methodology of like, hey, well, we're looking for folks that hold CSSP and the experience to include now the education piece of it, where I know there's an organization here, it's a power company that they, in order to get to a certain level at their, like, I think like not C-suite, but like managerial, you have to hold a bachelor's. And it's
Mhm.
just call it old fashioned, but just like you said, I think it's that filter mechanism where it's like, look, we just want our managers or however we want that's the certification standard, helps them filter out kind of as well, just like you mentioned as well. So I think that's actually a valid point. So
Yeah. And I think like it's important to consider the reason why they do that sometimes. Like with a bachelor's or a master's degree, you have a certain kind of implied level of basic knowledge that they might be looking for. And same thing with the security certifications in some of those government and contracting roles. They're looking to see that you have a basic broad level of security and technology and the things that they absolutely want you to know. And the easiest way for them to make sure that you have that baseline level of knowledge across the board is to have a certification. And that's really just kind of like a box checking exercise to say, like, we know that instead of starting from square zero, you're starting from square one and you have some basic idea of what these concepts are. That's really kind of the point of the certifications.
no, 100%. And I think it's like it's an easy checkbox as well, because it's just like
Mhm.
it also shows dedication, also good time management. And I mean, like, you can't just go into university and just they hand you a piece of paper. There's homework, assignments, projects. Like, it shows like, okay, like you can still work, also multitask. It also, I think, shows like good, like soft skill in a sense, like critical thinking skills of like having to do that type of work. So no, absolutely. One follow-up question I have for you is, so when you guys are trying to grow and like expand across maybe training or more in-depth kind of enhancement for your guys' team, what are some good training tools or sources that you guys like to leverage or maybe provide to maybe candidates that came really close to making the team, but maybe they missed like one or two things? Do you guys recommend, like, hey, like if you come back and maybe go build out some more home labs or do some cool projects, is there anything that you would recommend for folks to kind of make themselves stand out more when it comes into the overarching competitiveness on breaking into cyber with these kind of roles?
Ooh, that's a good question. I typically don't have that kind of feedback just because I'm not hiring a lot. So that when I do hire, like it's typically super competitive, and it might just be the difference of like this person had a bit more in-depth experience in this one area that was my highest priority thing instead of like being well-rounded across the board. And it could be a difference from that. And like we might have three fantastic candidates, and then I have to choose out of the three of them which is the one that we're going to actually bring on. And it might not necessarily be like, oh, you need to go do this exercise or something like that. It just happens to be what best fit the needs of the business and our existing
Yeah.
team at the time. And like, this one skill set was the thing that I focused on, and that was the gap that we needed to build out on and add to the team. And that's what made the difference in the decision. And sometimes it's really competitive and kind of hard to say like what was the make it or break it decision for that specific role.
Yeah, I know, and I don't know if you're does Defense Unicorn. I know some organizations do and don't. Do you guys give feedback if candidates reach out like, hey, was there anything I could have done better or worse? I know there's like the HR aspects where it's like, hey, yeah, we don't give feedback. Out of curiosity, do you know if Defense Unicorn does or no?
I don't think we typically do. That being said, like if somebody reaches out after the fact and they want to know what they could improve for the future, we would probably give it to them. We do send emails to everybody with like the reason why they were rejected, even if it's just like there was more
Oh,
qualified
cool.
candidates than you. So they do find out pretty quickly whether they are moving forward or whether they got rejected.
That's awesome. No, that's really cool. Like I know my buddies had a lot of folks in the community get hit and miss where it's like, oh, I had a really good feel, and then it's like they get passed over, and it's
Yeah.
that companies, some companies just it's a policy, which is totally understandable. Where it's like, yeah, we don't give feedback, sorry. But 9 times out of 10, just like you mentioned, I've had other organizations where it's like, hey man, reach out to the manager. Usually, sometimes, it's like I'll say 7 out of 10, they'll say, hey, let's jump on a quick LinkedIn call. I can give you some like kind of like under the table feedback of maybe what you could do better on. And that's fantastic, but also understandable that every organization has their policies. So, no, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm not aware of any like prohibition on doing that. So I think
yeah,
it's kind of at manager discretion if they want to do that. Typically, we won't give any feedback at all until the role is like done and closed and we already have an accepted offer and that person knows when they're starting. Um, but yeah, I know like a lot of companies don't even send a rejection email if they're not
I
going to
was
move
about
forward
to,
with you,
I
which
was
just
about to
breaks
say they
my
just
heart.
get ghosted, and it's
Yeah,
wild in
that's
this
not
day and
fair to the
age.
candidates. Like you kind of are, you're hanging your hopes out on that and you want to know whether you're moving forward or not so you can at least make a decision on what other roles to pursue. So yeah, I think it's super important that they at least get that indication as to whether they're still in the running
They
for it
need,
or
yeah, they
whether
need
it's already closed.
to give me closure, please. It's like,
Yeah, closure is important.
well, hey, we have two last questions for you, which I want to say a huge thank you for coming onto the channel. And if you're still watching, drop in the comment what's your favorite part been, what you've been enjoying. But as a thank you for coming on, as I always provide this, I want to make sure I get you some awesome GingerHacker swag that I'll be providing
Ooh.
to you after this link. So some awesome cool stuff you can choose from on me for letting me take some time away from your day to hop on the channel to share your insights. So really appreciate that. Now, I always tell people these last two questions are the hardest questions. So, my next question for you is when you're not doing cool defense unicorn stuff and when you're not doing cyber work, what do you like to do for fun? What do you do to unplug? What do you kind of get to do to unwind and get to relax?
Yeah. So unwinding and relaxing, particularly either before or after the workday, is like running and weightlifting. Both of those are pretty important to me. I really like running half marathons. I tried a full
Oh,
marathon
nice.
once and it took way too much of my life to train for it and to run the race itself. It was just like all day on a Saturday and then I was completely worthless for several days afterwards. Couldn't even walk upstairs. Yeah, so half marathons I found are kind of a good happy medium of like I can kind of train for them and stay in shape within like a normal workout schedule that doesn't take over your entire life.
Remind me the distance of
And
a half. How long's a half marathon?
13.1 miles.
Okay. It's okay.
So
It's,
so
yeah.
yeah, you can run like 3 to 5 miles a few days a week, and then usually on like either Saturday or Sunday, I'll run a little bit longer, like 6 to 12 miles, just depending as I get closer to a race, I do like longer and longer. And then like the week before I'll do 12 miles just to make sure my body's kind of ready to go the distance. But the rest of the
What's
time, like you can run a little less than that.
what's been your funnest one you've gotten to run? Like, so I know like my sister-in-law, I think she just did like the Disney World half marathon or the
Ooh.
marathon.
Let's see, funnest one. I have a map up on my wall, so I actually have a scratch off. Okay, yeah, I'm actually going
Oh,
to caveat this for
cool.
a second. So I also really love travel. So I set a goal for like my lifetime. I want to run a half marathon in every single state, so all 50 states.
Oh, cool.
So I have a scratch off map of the United States, and after I do one, it's like you just scratch it off the state. So there's a map up here. Um, I'm trying to think. And you said funnest, so I will caveat that. Um, Everyone has been memorable for its own reasons. I think the funnest one was probably one that I did in Virginia. And it was my mom actually flew out and met me. So she flies out and meets me for some of them, not all of them.
Oh,
And it was
fun.
a wine
Cool.
half marathon. So we ran
Oh,
the
okay.
race. And then afterwards, they had a whole bunch of wineries there that were giving like free tasting samples. We got a cool cup, carried it around, and I just filled it up. So that, that was a really fun time.
I thought it
Um,
seemed like every mile they poured you a glass of wine. Like, all right, next mile. It's
Oh
like,
man,
oh
I wouldn't
no.
make it to the end if that was the case. They do like beer 5Ks for that, and that would also just turn my stomach. But yeah, no, usually I run the race first and then drink the wine after. So yeah, that's been super fun.
That's super fantastic. And I think a huge piece of cybersecurity that maybe somewhat gets overlooked is like just like staying healthy in cybersecurity. It's like we sit in front of our computers and desks like all the time. Like I go to the gym every other day, if not every day, if I can, whether that's like doing cardio, lifting weights, somewhat staying active. Cause I mean, like, yeah, you're sitting at a desk all day, you're looking at a computer screen. Sometimes we work weird, odd hours where it's like only thing that's open is fast food. So like meal prepping's important. There's a whole health kick side video series I could completely run with on like staying healthy and breaking into cyber or being in
Hmm.
cybersecurity and staying healthy. But that's fantastic. And like I myself am I have to run because of the army, but I hate running. So because I'm a big boy, I'm a hefty dude with broad shoulders, and yeah, I don't like to run, but I have to. But no, that's awesome. My wife's an avid runner, so I mean, I see the peace in it and the cool. Like it's kind of nice, but yeah, it's God bless because
Yeah,
I'm
I
not a
think
fan. I'm not a
another
fan of running.
piece of that too, and the reason to enjoy workouts kind of as stress relief is in cybersecurity, the work is never done. There's always more to do.
Yes.
And I need a reason, and probably everybody needs a reason to bookend your day and get up and go away from the computer and go
Yes.
do something, move your body, get that stress relief. Because if I didn't have that thing, like right at the end of the day that I had scheduled for a run or a workout and I need to go leave my desk and do it, um, I would probably work several hours more and just like bleed into my evening and never get up. That's kind of the downside of remote work is like you're home, so you could just work all the time, and the work never ends. So yeah, you got to kind of have a good way to bookend your days and get yourself out to do some other activities and move into personal time.
Exactly. Well, this has been so fantastic. We have one final question for you, and that is what final advice would you give somebody trying to break into cyber?
All right. Well, I briefly touched on this earlier, but I think if you're trying to break into cyber, those network connections and the personal connections that you have are really going to be what helps you to land that first role. And those people that are willing to put their neck out, put their reputation out for you, and say, "Hey, you should take a person on this chance, or you should take a chance on this person. I think they'll be worth it." And building that network organically. So whether you can find connections that you can see in person or work with remotely in some way, is going to be really important because the most powerful connections that I have are people that I have worked side by side with. They know my character, they know what skills I have, they know what I stand for, and they know what type of person I am to work with. So the more you could do that in every single role that you have, be that fantastic, fun person to work with, be that person that is trustworthy and people that know that they can count on is going to be so important to building your network over time and maintaining those really strong connections. Yeah, and then just using those connections to get an introduction to some of these other companies that might have the roles that you actually want to work in is going to be key to landing that first or second role.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, everyone, this is this week's episode of Breaking into Cyber. Tell us what your favorite part was. Always great to see you guys on the channel. And as always, we'll catch you on the next video.